The autumn breeze whispered secrets through Virginia Warren's tangled hair as she crouched in the dilapidated barn, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild mustang. Blood trickled from her split lip, the final farewell gift from Edgar Holloway, the husband she'd finally found the courage to flee after 3 years of misery masked as marriage. Virginia clutched her small leather satchel, containing the only possessions she'd managed to grab. A tarnished silver locket from her mother, $37 saved in secret, and a wrinkled map leading west. At 22, she was now a fugitive from the man who had promised to love her, but instead had only ever possessed her. Red Cloud, Nebraska, 1878, a town she'd chosen because it was far enough from St. Louis to disappear, yet established enough that a woman alone might find honest work. The town had sprung up alongside the railroad, and Virginia had used every last bit of her cunning to secure passage on a freight car, bribing a sympathetic porter who looked the other way. The barn she'd found to shelter in sat on the outskirts of town, seemingly abandoned. Virginia hadn't slept properly in 4 days, constantly moving, constantly watching over her shoulder. Edgar had connections: bankers, lawmen, businessmen who owed him favors, the kind of men who wouldn't think twice about returning a confused wife to her worried husband. The wound on her lip stung as she took a sip from her canteen, the water painfully cold against the raw flesh. She'd need to find work soon. The money wouldn't last, and Edgar would be searching. He'd never let her go, not because he loved her, but because Edgar Holloway didn't lose what belonged to him. A sound outside made Virginia freeze. Footsteps. Heavy boots on dried grass. Her breath caught in her throat as she shrank back into the shadows behind a stack of moldy hay. The barn door creaked open, allowing a shaft of late afternoon sunlight to cut through the dusty air. "I know you're in here." The voice was deep, unhurried. "This is my property you're trespassing on." Virginia didn't move, didn't breathe. Perhaps if she remained still enough, he would leave. "Madam, I've tracked elk more elusive than you. Your footprints lead straight from the creek to my barn." The man sighed. "I'm not aiming to hurt you. Just want to know why there's a stranger hiding on my land." Slowly, Virginia rose from her hiding place, clutching her satchel like a shield. The man before her stood tall in the doorway, his silhouette rimmed with golden light. As her eyes adjusted, she could make out a lean, weather-hardened face beneath a worn Stetson. He wore a simple flannel shirt, denim pants, and a gun belt that had seen better days. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of her face, at the bruise blooming across her cheekbone and the crusted blood on her lip. "Who did that to you?" The question came quietly, an unexpected gentleness in his tone. "No one," Virginia answered reflexively, the lie familiar on her tongue. "I fell." The man studied her for a long moment. "Must have been quite a fall to split your lip in that particular way." He didn't push further, but instead stepped back, giving her space. "Name's Clayton Yates. This is my ranch you've wandered onto." "I'm sorry," Virginia said, gathering her courage. "I didn't know anyone lived here. The barn looked abandoned." "Haven't had livestock in a spell," Clayton explained. "Drought took most of my cattle 2 years back. Been rebuilding slowly." He gestured to her split lip. "You running from someone?" Virginia stiffened, ready to deny it, to flee, but something in Clayton Yates' steady gaze made her hesitate. There was no judgment there, only a quiet understanding that somehow unraveled her practiced lies. "My husband," she admitted, the words so soft they barely stirred the air between them. Clayton nodded once, as if her answer confirmed something he already knew. "You hungry?" The question caught Virginia off guard. She opened her mouth to refuse, to insist she needed to move on, but her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, a stale biscuit and a withered apple. "I can pay," she said quickly, reaching for her precious money. "Put that away," Clayton said, almost gruffly. "I don't take payment for basic decency." He gestured toward the door. "House is just up the hill. Nothing fancy, but there's hot food and you can clean up." Virginia hesitated, years of hard-learned caution warring with desperate need. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Clayton's weathered face softened slightly. "My sister ran from a man like that once. Nobody helped her." He let the implication hang in the air between them. "You don't have to come if you don't trust me. But night's falling and there's wolves in these parts, both the four-legged kind and the two-legged kind." Virginia weighed her options. The man could have easily overpowered her already if that had been his intention. And something in those steady eyes spoke of honor, a quality she'd learned was rarer than gold. "Just for tonight," she conceded. "I'll be moving on tomorrow." Clayton nodded, turning toward the door. "Follow me, then. And watch your step, path gets rocky." The walk to Clayton's house took less than 5 minutes, though Virginia's exhaustion made it feel longer. The ranch house sat on a modest rise, a sturdy 2-story structure built of local timber with a wide porch wrapping around the front. It was simple but well-maintained, with smoke curling from the stone chimney. "It's not much," Clayton said as they approached, "but it keeps the rain out and the heat in." Inside, the house was unexpectedly clean for a bachelor's dwelling. A fire crackled in the hearth, illuminating a living area furnished with handcrafted wooden furniture. Clayton gestured to a door off the main room. "Washrooms through there. There's clean towels and I can heat water for you. Might even be some of my sister's old things in the chest if you want something clean to wear." Virginia's throat tightened at the simple kindness. "Thank you, Mr. Yates." "Clayton," he corrected. "Mr. Yates was my father, and he's been dead going on 7 years now." While Clayton heated water and prepared a simple meal, Virginia took advantage of the washroom. The mirror above the basin revealed a woman she barely recognized, hollowed cheeks, dark circles beneath her eyes, and the ugly bruise that marred her once pretty features. She gingerly cleaned her face, wincing as she dabbed at her split lip. In the chest, she found a modest calico dress that fit well enough, though it hung a bit loose on her frame. When she emerged, Clayton had set the table with a hearty stew, fresh bread, and coffee. "It's venison," he explained, nodding toward the stew. "Shot the buck myself last week." They ate in relative silence, Virginia's hunger overcoming her usual restraint. The stew was surprisingly good, rich with root vegetables and savory herbs. "You cook well," she commented, breaking the silence. "Necessity teaches a man many things," Clayton replied with a slight shrug. "Been on my own since Pa died." "You mentioned your sister," Virginia ventured cautiously. Clayton's expression darkened slightly. "Eliza. She married young to a man from Omaha, banker. Respectable type, or so everyone thought." He paused, his spoon hovering above his bowl. "She ran after 2 years, made it all the way to San Francisco before pneumonia took her." "I'm sorry," Virginia said softly. "Been a long time now," Clayton responded, though the shadow in his eyes suggested otherwise. "That's why I know what a woman running looks like. You've got the same hunted look Eliza had." Virginia set down her spoon, appetite suddenly diminished. "My husband will be looking for me." "I shouldn't stay here, it puts you at risk." "What's his name?" Clayton asked. Virginia hesitated, reluctant to speak the name aloud, as if doing so might conjure the man himself. "Edgar Holloway." Clayton's brow furrowed. "The banker from St. Louis." Virginia's heart sank. "You've heard of him." "Read about him in the newspaper. Man with connections like that can make trouble even out here." "All the more reason for me to move on," Virginia insisted, rising from her chair. "Where will you go?" Clayton's question was simple but stopped her cold. I don't know, she admitted. West, I suppose, somewhere he can't find me. Clayton regarded her thoughtfully. You need rest before you go anywhere and a plan. He stood collecting their dishes. Take the bedroom upstairs tonight. I'll sleep down here by the fire. Virginia wanted to protest, but found herself swaying slightly with exhaustion. The prospect of a real bed after days of running was too tempting to refuse. Just tonight, she repeated. I'll be gone before sunrise. Clayton nodded, but something in his eyes told her he didn't believe it. Stairs are behind you. First door on the right. The bedroom was simple, a sturdy bed with a patchwork quilt, a bedside table with an oil lamp, and a small chest of drawers. The window overlooked the rolling plains stretching toward the horizon, bathed now in the fading purple light of dusk. Virginia sank onto the edge of the bed, her body aching with accumulated fatigue. She hadn't meant to sleep, had only intended to rest for a moment, but exhaustion claimed her swiftly, pulling her into the first deep slumber she'd experienced since fleeing St. Louis. Morning came with gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through the thin curtains and warming Virginia's face. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was, half expecting to feel Edgar's heavy arm pinning her to the mattress. The realization that she was free at least for now washed over her with profound relief. Downstairs, she found Clayton already awake, tending to the fire and brewing coffee. He looked up as she descended the stairs, nodding in greeting. There's eggs and bacon if you're hungry, he said, gesturing to the stove. I should be going, Virginia replied, though her stomach protested at the thought of refusing food. At least eat first, Clayton insisted. Long road ahead wherever you're heading. Virginia relented, accepting the plate he offered. They ate in companionable silence, the only sounds the scrape of forks against plates and the occasional crackle from the fire. I need hired help, Clayton said abruptly as Virginia finished her coffee. She looked up, startled by the non sequitur. Pardon, ranch this size needs more than one pair of hands, he continued, his tone matter-of-fact. I've been managing alone since my last hand left for California gold fields, but it's getting to be too much. Virginia set down her cup slowly. Are you offering me work, Mr. Yates? Clayton, he corrected again. And yes, I am. Room and board plus fair wages. You'd be safe here. My land stretches far enough that strangers get noticed long before they reach the house. I don't know the first thing about ranching, Virginia admitted. Can you cook, clean, mend clothes? Yes, of course, but then you know enough to start, Clayton interrupted. Rest I can teach you if you're willing to learn. Virginia studied him carefully. Why would you do this? Take such a risk for a stranger? Clayton's gaze was steady, unflinching. Maybe I'm tired of eating my own cooking. Maybe I could use the company. His expression softened slightly. Or maybe I'm trying to do for you what nobody did for Eliza. The offer was tempting, more tempting than Virginia wanted to admit. Red Cloud was small enough that word wouldn't reach St. Louis easily, yet far enough from her past that Edgar might not think to look here first. I can't stay forever, she said finally. When he tracks me this far, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Clayton said. For now, you need a safe place and I need help around the ranch. Seems like a fair arrangement to me. Virginia took a deep breath, weighing her limited options. I'll stay, she decided, but only until I've earned enough to travel further west. Clayton nodded once as if sealing a pact. Fair enough. That first day established the pattern of many to follow. Clayton showed Virginia around the ranch, a modest operation consisting of the main house, the barn she'd hidden in, a chicken coop, a vegetable garden gone slightly wild, and a corral where 3 horses grazed contentedly. Beyond these immediate structures lay several hundred acres of grazing land, where Clayton was slowly rebuilding his herd after the devastating drought. "Lost nearly everything 2 summers ago," he explained as they walked the property. "Drought killed the grass, cattle died, and what survived I had to sell cheap just to keep the land." "Yet you stayed," Virginia observed. Clayton nodded toward a small fenced plot on a nearby rise. 2 wooden crosses stood sentinel there. "Ma and Pa are buried on this land. This place is in my blood. Couldn't leave it even when sense said I should." Virginia found herself settling into ranch life with surprising ease. The routine provided a structure she hadn't realized she craved after years of walking on eggshells around Edgar's unpredictable moods. She rose early each morning, prepared breakfast, tended the garden and chickens, and kept the house in order while Clayton worked the cattle. In the evenings, they would share simple meals, Clayton occasionally teaching Virginia about ranching operations. Despite her initial protestations, she proved an eager student, absorbing knowledge about cattle, horses, and the land with genuine interest. As weeks passed, Virginia began to notice subtle changes in Clayton. The taciturn rancher slowly revealed glimpses of the man beneath the weathered exterior, a dry sense of humor, a surprising knowledge of literature gleaned from long winter nights of reading, and a gentle way with animals that spoke volumes about his character. For his part, Clayton watched Virginia's transformation with quiet admiration. The frightened woman he'd found hiding in his barn was gradually being replaced by someone steadier, someone who laughed more freely and held her head higher with each passing day. The bruises on her face had long since faded, but Clayton often caught her absently touching her lip where it had been split, an unconscious reminder of what she had escaped. In those moments, a protective anger would flare in him, a feeling he was careful to keep hidden, knowing Virginia needed his steady friendship more than his rage on her behalf. Nearly 2 months after Virginia's arrival, the first snow of winter dusted the Nebraska plains. Clayton had been working from dawn to dusk for days, preparing the ranch for the harsh season ahead. Virginia had taken to helping more directly with the livestock, discovering an unexpected affinity for horses in particular. That evening, as they sat before the fire, Virginia mending one of Clayton's shirts while he cleaned his rifle, a comfortable silence stretched between them. "You're good with that Appaloosa mare," Clayton remarked, breaking the quiet. "She doesn't take to most people." Virginia smiled, pleased by the compliment. "She just needs patience, and perhaps a few extra apples. You've got a way with her. Reminds me of how my ma was with horses. They trusted her instinctively." Virginia set aside her mending, suddenly pensive. "Clayton, I've been here almost 2 months now." "Has it been that long?" he asked, though they both knew he was well aware of the exact number of days. "I should have moved on by now. It isn't safe for me to stay in one place too long." Clayton carefully set his cleaned rifle aside. "Have you felt unsafe here?" "No," Virginia admitted, "but that doesn't mean I'm not putting you at risk. Edgar won't stop looking." She twisted her hands in her lap. "He's a proud man. He won't accept being abandoned, especially not by a wife he considers his property." "You're not property," Clayton said firmly. "You're a person, a good one, who deserves better than what that man gave you." Virginia looked up, meeting his gaze. "Why have you never asked about him? About what happened?" Clayton held her gaze steadily. "Figured you'd tell me when you were ready." "Or not. Your past is yours to share or keep." The simple respect in his words loosened something in Virginia's chest, a knot of shame and fear she'd carried for so long she'd stopped noticing its weight. "I was 18 when we married," she began quietly. "Edgar was 34, established, respected. My father had just died, leaving considerable debts. Edgar offered security, a position in society." She gave a hollow laugh. I thought I was being practical, mature. Clayton remained silent, his attention unwavering. He was charming at first, attentive. The change came so gradually I hardly noticed. A criticism here, an isolated incident there. Virginia's voice grew distant. By the time I realized what was happening, I had no friends left, no family to turn to. Edgar controlled everything, the money, who I spoke to, what I wore. She unconsciously touched her lip again. The first time he struck me was a year into our marriage. He apologized so beautifully afterward, brought me jewelry, wept, promised it would never happen again. Virginia's smile was bitter. It always happens again. Clayton's hands had tightened on the arms of his chair, but his voice remained gentle. What made you leave now, after 3 years? Virginia met his eyes directly. I discovered I was with child. Clayton's expression shifted, surprise giving way to understanding. I lost the baby, Virginia continued, her voice catching. After Edgar pushed me down the stairs during an argument, the doctor told me I might never have another. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's when I knew I had to leave. Not just for myself anymore, but for the family I might still have someday, with someone who would cherish it rather than destroy it. Clayton rose from his chair and knelt before her, taking her hands in his. His touch was warm, calloused from years of hard work, yet infinitely gentle. "Virginia," he said softly, "stay with me." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond the simple offer of continued shelter. "It isn't safe," she whispered. "He'll find me eventually." "Then we'll face him together," Clayton replied with quiet determination. "I'm not asking you to hide here forever. I'm asking you to build something with me, something worth fighting for." Virginia looked into his eyes, seeing there a steadfastness she'd never encountered before. "I'm still legally his wife." "There are lawyers in Lincoln who can help with that," Clayton said. "When spring comes, we'll go together." "You hardly know me," Virginia protested weakly. Clayton smiled, the expression transforming his solemn face. "I know enough. I know you're strong enough to leave a bad situation, smart enough to adapt to ranch life, kind enough to nurse orphaned lambs through the night. I know you hum when you think no one's listening, and that you prefer the sunrise to the sunset." Virginia's breath caught at the simple intimacy of his observations. "I'm not asking for promises," Clayton continued. "Just asking you to stay, to give whatever this is growing between us a chance to take root properly." Virginia looked down at their joined hands, her slender fingers entwined with his stronger ones. The contrast struck her, as fitting. She was not fragile, but she had been broken. Clayton's strength wasn't in domination but in steadiness, in the patient way he supported without controlling. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll stay." The winter that followed was the harshest Nebraska had seen in a decade. Snow piled in drifts against the house and biting winds howled across the plains. Yet inside Clayton's home, gradually becoming their home, Virginia found a warmth that had nothing to do with the constantly maintained fire. Their relationship evolved slowly, with a cautious respect for Virginia's still healing spirit. Clayton never pushed, never demanded, content to let trust build naturally between them. He taught her to ride properly, to shoot a rifle for protection, to read the weather in the cloud patterns and the behavior of animals. In turn, Virginia brought life back to spaces long neglected in the bachelor's home. The kitchen became a place of experimentation and laughter. The garden, though dormant under snow, was meticulously planned for spring planting. She filled empty shelves with books ordered from a catalog, creating a small library in a corner of the living room where they would read to each other on particularly bitter evenings, when even ranch chores couldn't justify venturing outside. By February, Virginia had begun sleeping in Clayton's room. though he insisted on a separate bed until she was ready for more. It was a gesture of respect that moved her deeply, this understanding. That intimacy needed to be rebuilt from its foundations after the twisted version she'd experienced with Edgar. March brought the first tentative signs of thaw, patches of earth emerging from beneath the snow like islands in a white sea. With the warming weather came increased activity at the ranch as preparations began for spring calving and planting. Virginia had just returned from collecting eggs, her basket full, when she saw a cloud of dust on the distant road that led to the ranch. Visitors were rare, especially this early in the season when the roads were still treacherous with mud and melting snow. She shaded her eyes, watching as the dust resolved into a carriage, an expensive one, pulled by two matching gray horses. Her heart stuttered painfully in her chest as recognition dawned. Only one person she knew traveled in such style: Edgar. Virginia stood frozen, the egg basket clutched in suddenly numb fingers. How had he found her? Had someone from town recognized her from a description or photograph? Had he systematically searched every town along the railroad lines heading west? The specifics hardly mattered now. What mattered was that her past had caught up with her, threatening the peace she'd found, the future she'd begun to envision with Clayton. Clayton was checking fence lines on the far side of the property. He wouldn't be back for hours. Virginia was alone, facing the man she'd fled from, the man who believed he owned her. Her first instinct was to run, to flee into the house, bar the doors, hide as she had in the barn months ago. But something stopped her. Perhaps it was the months of steady work that had strengthened her body. Perhaps it was Clayton's quiet confidence in her capabilities. Or perhaps it was simply the bone-deep knowledge that if she ran now, she would never truly stop running. Virginia set the egg basket carefully on the porch step and walked forward to meet the approaching carriage, her spine straight, her chin lifted. She would not cower. Not anymore. The carriage drew to a halt 20 yards from the house, the horses snorting and stamping in the muddy yard. The door swung open, and Edgar Holloway stepped down, every bit as imposing as in her memories, tall, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit and polished boots that looked absurdly out of place on a Nebraska ranch. "Virginia," he called, his voice carrying the artificial warmth he reserved for public appearances. "My dear, I've been so worried." Virginia remained where she was, maintaining the distance between them. "Hello, Edgar. How did you find me?" Edgar smiled, the expression not reaching his cold eyes. "Did you really think you could hide from me? I have friends everywhere, Virginia. It was only a matter of time." He took a step toward her, and Virginia instinctively stepped back. Edgar's smile faltered. "Come now, this game has gone on long enough. I've come to take you home where you belong." "This is my home now," Virginia stated firmly, though her heart pounded so violently she was certain he must hear it. Edgar's facade of pleasantness slipped further. "Don't be ridiculous. You're my wife. Your place is with me in St. Louis." "No, Edgar, I'm not going back." His expression darkened, the mask of civility dropping entirely. "You think I came all this way to be refused? You embarrassed me, Virginia. Left without a word like a thief in the night. People talk. Do you understand what that does to a man of my position?" "I understand what you did to me," Virginia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I understand what kind of man hurts his wife, controls her every move, pushes her downstairs when she's carrying his child." Edgar's face flushed with anger. "You always were prone to exaggeration." "Accidents happen in every marriage. That wasn't an accident, none of it was." Edgar took another step forward, his patience visibly thinning. "Enough of this nonsense, get your things, we're leaving." "She's not going anywhere with you." The new voice came from behind Virginia. She turned to see Clayton approaching from the side of the house, his rifle held casually but unmistakably ready. Relief washed through her. He must have seen the carriage from the ridge and ridden back immediately. Edgar assessed Clayton with the cold calculation of a banker weighing a risky investment. "And you are, Clayton Yates. This is my ranch you're standing on." Edgar's eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. "Ah, so this is where my wayward wife has been hiding, in the bed of some frontier nobody." Clayton's expression remained impassive, though Virginia saw the tightening around his eyes. "Virginia has been working here as my housekeeper. She's under my protection now." Edgar laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Protection? She's my wife, Cowboy. The law is on my side." "The law also has something to say about men who beat their wives," Clayton replied evenly. "Hearsay and hysteria," Edgar dismissed with a wave. "Virginia has always been imaginative, emotional. It's why she needs proper guidance." Clayton moved to stand beside Virginia, his presence solid and reassuring. "She doesn't seem in need of guidance to me. Seems like a woman who knows her own mind quite well." Edgar's expression hardened further. "I don't know what lies she's told you, but I've had enough of this farce." "Virginia, get in the carriage. Now." "No," Virginia said, the simple word carrying the weight of all her accumulated courage. Edgar's hand moved toward his coat, and Clayton smoothly raised his rifle. "I wouldn't," Clayton warned quietly. Edgar froze, then slowly raised his hands to show they were empty. "You're making a grave mistake, both of you. I have friends in the territorial government, connections with the law. One telegraph message and I could have authorities here by tomorrow." "You could," Clayton agreed calmly. "But then we'd have to discuss why Mrs. Holloway fled from you in the first place. Why she bears scars that match the testimony of your household staff, who, I'm told, have quite a few stories to share about what goes on behind the closed doors of the Holloway mansion." Edgar's face paled slightly. "What are you talking about?" Clayton's expression remained steady. "Did you think Virginia was the only one making inquiries these past months? I have friends too, Mr. Holloway. Not as wealthy as yours, perhaps, but honest people who recognize injustice when they see it." Virginia looked at Clayton in surprise. He had never mentioned contacting anyone in St. Louis. "Your butler, Mr. Simmons, was particularly forthcoming," Clayton continued. "As was your cook, Mrs. Bartlett. Seems they've been troubled by what they've witnessed for some time. Just needed someone to ask the right questions." Edgar's confident facade cracked further. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Clayton's voice hardened. "Shall we put it to the test? Shall we have a judge hear testimony about the broken wrist that was explained away as a carriage accident? Or the miscarriage caused by a fall that multiple witnesses say was actually a push?" Virginia watched the calculation in Edgar's eyes, the weighing of his reputation against his desire to reclaim what he considered his property. Scandal was the one thing Edgar had always feared more than anything else. "She's still legally my wife," Edgar said finally, his tone colder than the winter winds. "Not for much longer," Virginia replied. "Divorce papers were filed in Lincoln last month." Given the evidence, the judge was quite sympathetic. This was true. Clayton had arranged for a lawyer during a brief trip they'd made to the capital when the roads first cleared. Virginia had been surprised by how straightforward the process had been with proper documentation and witness accounts. Edgar's gaze darted between them, assessing, recalculating. "This isn't over," he said finally, his voice low with suppressed rage. "No one walks away from me. No one." "She already has," Clayton stated simply. "And now you're going to get back in that fancy carriage and leave this property. If you ever come near Virginia again, or try to interfere with her life in any way, those witness statements go directly to the newspapers, not just in Nebraska, but in St. Louis too. For a long moment, Edgar stood rigidly, fury radiating from him in almost palpable waves. Then, with a visible effort at control, he straightened his coat and turned toward his carriage. "You'll regret this," he said, looking back at Virginia. "Both of you." Virginia met his gaze steadily. "The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner." Edgar's jaw tightened, but he climbed back into his carriage without another word. The driver, who had watched the entire confrontation impassively, turned the horses, and the expensive vehicle began its retreat down the muddy drive. Virginia stood watching until the carriage was nothing more than a distant dust cloud on the horizon. Only then did her legs begin to tremble, the delayed reaction to the confrontation hitting her all at once. Clayton set his rifle aside and gently took her elbow, steadying her. "Are you all right?" Virginia turned to look at him, amazement mixing with gratitude. "You contacted people in St. Louis, gathered evidence." Clayton nodded. "After you told me your story that night by the fire, sent telegrams to some contacts in Missouri. Figured it wouldn't hurt to have something to hold over him if he ever tracked you down." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Didn't want to worry you," Clayton said simply. "And honestly wasn't sure if anyone would be willing to speak against a man like Holloway. But seems your husband wasn't as careful about his private behavior as he thought. People saw, people remembered." Virginia's eyes filled with tears not of fear or sadness, but of profound relief. "Do you think he'll really stay away?" "Men like Holloway care about one thing above all else, their reputation. He knows we have the power to destroy that now." Clayton squeezed her hand gently. "But even if he doesn't, we'll face it together. I meant what I said that night, Virginia. I want you to stay with me. Not out of necessity or fear, but because you choose to." Virginia looked up at this man who had become her protector, her friend, and though neither had spoken, it allowed yet something more. In his steady gaze, she saw not possession but partnership, not control but support. "I choose to stay," she said softly. "Not because I need protection, but because here with you I've found something I never knew existed." "And what's that?" Clayton asked, his voice gentle. "A place where I'm valued for who I am, not what I can be molded into." Virginia smiled, reaching up to touch his weathered cheek. "A place where I can grow strong instead of being kept weak. A home, Clayton. A real one." Clayton covered her hand with his own, turning his face slightly to press a kiss against her palm. "Then let's build it together day by day." As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Virginia felt a weight lifting, the constant fear she'd carried since fleeing St. Louis finally beginning to dissipate. Edgar might never truly accept his loss, but she was no longer the frightened woman who had hidden in Clayton's barn. She was stronger now, surrounded by truth instead of lies, protected by love instead of controlled by fear. Spring came to Nebraska in a rush of green, as if the land was eager to make up for winter's long dominance. The ranch bloomed with new life, calves in the pastures, seedlings in the garden, wildflowers carpeting the rolling hills. Virginia threw herself into the season's work with enthusiasm, her confidence growing as each day passed without any sign of Edgar or his influence reaching Red Cloud. By early June, their life had settled into a pleasant rhythm. The divorce proceedings continued in Lincoln, progressing slowly but steadily through the necessary legal channels. Clayton's small herd was thriving, and he'd even hired a young ranch hand named Samuel to help with the increasing workload. One evening, as the sunset painted the plains in shades of gold and crimson, Clayton suggested they ride to the ridge overlooking the property. They often went there when time allowed, enjoying the sweeping view of the land they now tended together. As they reached the crest, Clayton dismounted and helped Virginia down from her horse, the Appaloosa mare that had become hers in all but name. They stood side by side, watching as the last rays of sunlight gilded the distant horizon. "Beautiful," Virginia murmured, leaning comfortably against Clayton's side. "Yes, it is," he agreed, though when she glanced up, she found him looking not at the sunset but at her. Virginia smiled, still occasionally surprised by the warmth that flooded her whenever she caught him looking at her that way, with admiration untainted by possession, desire mingled with respect. Clayton reached into his pocket, suddenly appearing uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he admitted, withdrawing a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. Virginia's heart quickened as he carefully unwrapped it, revealing a simple gold ring set with a single, modest pearl. "It was my mother's," Clayton explained softly. "Pa gave it to her when they homesteaded this land together. Said the pearl reminded him of how something beautiful can grow from a small irritation, just like something beautiful grew from the hardships they faced building a life here." He held the ring between them, his eyes searching hers. "I know you're not legally free yet, and I know you might need more time after everything you've been through, but I wanted you to know that whenever you're ready, whether that's next month or next year, I'm asking you to be my wife. To build a life here together, as equals." Virginia looked at the simple ring, then up at the earnest face of the man who had become her salvation in ways he couldn't fully understand. With Clayton, she had learned that love wasn't meant to diminish but to expand, wasn't meant to control but to liberate. "I don't need more time," she said softly. "I've known since that night by the fire when you asked me to stay. I want to be your wife, Clayton Yates. I want to build that life with you." Clayton's smile was like the sunrise warming her from the inside out. He slipped the ring onto her finger, where it fit as if it had always been meant for her hand. "I promise you this," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "I will never try to make you smaller to fit my idea of what you should be. I want to see you grow, to become everything you're capable of being." Virginia's eyes filled with tears at the simple, profound promise so different from the vows Edgar had made and broken. "And I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes, good or bad. To be your partner in truth, not just in name." Clayton drew her gently into his arms, his kiss a sealing of their promises, tender yet passionate, respectful yet wanting. When they finally parted, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky above them. "We should head back," Clayton murmured, though he made no move to release her. Virginia nodded, though she too seemed reluctant to end the moment. "Samuel will wonder what's become of us." They rode back to the ranch house in companionable silence, the pearl on Virginia's finger catching the last light of day. As they approached, they could see Samuel on the porch, waving urgently. "Telegram came for you, Miss Virginia," he called as they dismounted. "Ryder brought it special from town." Virginia exchanged a concerned glance with Clayton before taking the folded paper from Samuel's hand. Telegrams rarely brought good news, especially when delivered after normal business hours. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the brief message. Clayton watched her face, ready to support her through whatever news it contained. To his surprise, a smile slowly spread across Virginia's features. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "It's from the lawyer in Lincoln," she explained. "Edgar has withdrawn his contest to the divorce. It's been granted, effective immediately." Clayton's eyebrows rose in surprise. "He gave up, just like that." Virginia handed him the telegram so he could read the additional details. "Not exactly out of goodness of heart. Apparently, there's been a financial scandal at his bank. He's facing potential criminal charges and can't afford additional negative publicity right now." Clayton read the telegram, a slow smile spreading across his own face. Sometimes justice comes from unexpected directions. Indeed, Virginia agreed, feeling a final weight lifting from her shoulders. She was truly free now legally as well as emotionally. That night, after a celebratory dinner where Samuel was the first to toast their engagement, Virginia and Clayton sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the vast Nebraska sky. The ranch stretched before them, peaceful in the gathering darkness. "What are you thinking?" Clayton asked, his arm comfortably around her shoulders. Virginia considered the question, her fingers absently touching the pearl ring that symbolized their future. "I'm thinking about how strange life's paths can be," she said finally. "6 months ago, I was hiding in your barn, terrified and alone. Now I'm sitting here planning a wedding, planting roots in soil I've come to love." Clayton nodded thoughtfully. "Life has a way of bringing people where they need to be, sometimes through the hardest routes." "Do you think we would have found each other if I hadn't been running from Edgar? If I hadn't hidden in your barn that day?" "I'd like to think so," Clayton said softly. "Some things just seem meant to be despite all odds." Virginia leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment spreading through her like the warmth from the hearth on a cold winter's night. "When should we have the wedding?" "Harvest time," Clayton suggested. "When the work eases a bit, we could invite the whole town, make it a proper celebration." Virginia smiled, imagining the small church in Red Cloud filled with the people who had gradually accepted her into their community over the past months. "I'd like that. A new beginning as the season changes." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, planning their future in quiet conversations punctuated by comfortable silences and occasional laughter. The night deepened around them, stars blazing in the clear Nebraska sky, as endless as the possibilities that stretched before them. 3 months later, on a perfect autumn day when the prairie grasses had turned to gold and the harvest was safely gathered, Virginia Warren became Virginia Yates in a simple ceremony at Red Cloud's white-steepled church. She wore a dress of ivory silk ordered from a catalog in Lincoln, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a formal veil. Clayton waited for her at the altar, his usually weathered face clean-shaven for the occasion, his eyes never leaving hers as she walked toward him on the arm of Samuel, who had proudly accepted the honor of giving her away. The small church overflowed with well-wishers, neighbors who had come to respect the quiet rancher and his independent bride, townspeople who had gradually embraced Virginia as one of their own, ranch hands from nearby properties who counted Clayton as a friend. As they exchanged their vows, Virginia's voice was clear and unwavering, filling the sun-dappled church with the certainty of her choice, her commitment. Clayton's deeper tones joined hers, his promises simple but profound. "With this ring, I thee wed," he said, sliding a simple gold band to join the pearl engagement ring on her finger. "What began with stay with me becomes walk with me through all that life brings." Virginia's eyes shimmered with happy tears as she placed a matching band on his work-hardened hand. "From the shelter of your barn to the shelter of your heart, I will walk with you, stand with you, grow with you." The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening tables, groaning with food contributed by every family for miles around, music from fiddles and a battered piano, dancing and laughter beneath lantern light as the autumn sun set in spectacular fashion. As the party continued around them, Clayton led Virginia away from the crowd to a quiet spot beneath an ancient cottonwood tree. From there, they could see the distant lights of their ranch house, their home waiting for them on the horizon. "Happy?" Clayton asked simply, his arms encircling her waist. Virginia turned in his embrace to face him, reaching up to trace the beloved contours of his face. "Beyond anything I ever imagined possible. Even when you were hiding in my barn, scared half to death," Clayton teased gently. Virginia laughed, the sound as free and joyful as the breeze rustling through the prairie grass around them. Especially then. That day, running led me home instead of away. She rose on tiptoe to brush her lips against his. Sometimes the path to happiness begins with the courage to flee what hurts you. And the courage to stay when something heals you, Clayton added softly, drawing her closer. As they kissed beneath the spreading cottonwood, with celebration in the background and their home visible in the distance, Virginia knew with bone-deep certainty that she had found what every human heart seeks, not just safety or passion or companionship, but the perfect balance of all three. A love that neither confined nor abandoned, that challenged without diminishing, that protected without controlling. In the years that followed, the Yates ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Virginia's garden expanded to provide vegetables for their table year-round, and Clayton's herd grew to rival the largest in the county. They built additional rooms onto the house as their family expanded, first with twins, a boy and girl who arrived exactly 1 year after their wedding, then 3 years later with another son whose boisterous nature kept them all laughing. Word occasionally reached them of Edgar Holloway, his financial disgrace, his eventual move to Chicago to start anew, his remarriage to a banker's daughter. Each piece of news affected Virginia less and less, until one day she realized she had gone an entire year without thinking of her former life at all. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as their children slept soundly upstairs and the autumn wind whispered around the eaves of their expanded home, Virginia and Clayton sat before the fire, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting comfortably against him. "Any regrets?" Clayton asked, the question a ritual they had established on each anniversary, a way of ensuring they remained honest with each other, open about their needs and dreams. Virginia considered the question seriously, as she always did. "Only that it took me so long to find the courage to leave. Think of all the time we could have had if I'd been braver sooner." Clayton kissed her temple gently. "You were exactly brave enough at exactly the right time, not a moment too soon or too late." Virginia smiled, knowing he was right. The journey that had led her to this man, this home, this life could not have happened any other way. Every step, even the painful ones, had been necessary to bring her here, to this perfect moment of contentment. "And you?" she asked, continuing their anniversary tradition. "Any regrets?" Clayton pretended to consider deeply, his brow furrowing in mock seriousness. "Well, I do regret not checking that barn earlier. To think you might have been hiding there for days while I was obliviously mending fences." Virginia laughed, playfully swatting his arm. "I was only there for hours, not days." "Still," Clayton insisted with a grin, "I could have met my future wife that much sooner." Virginia's expression softened. "I wasn't ready to be anyone's wife then. I was too broken, too afraid." "And now?" Clayton asked, his voice dropping to the intimate tone reserved only for her. Virginia rose from her seat, taking his hands and drawing him up with her. "Now I am wholly myself, wholly yours, wholly free, all at the same time." She led him toward the stairs, toward their bedroom. "And that is the greatest gift you've given me." As they climbed the stairs together, Virginia's heart swelled with the quiet joy of ordinary love, the kind that sustains through seasons and sorrows, that builds and grows stronger with each challenge overcome. Not the desperate passion she had once mistaken for love, but the steady flame that warms without consuming, that illuminates without blinding. From a frightened woman hiding in a stranger's barn to the confident mistress of her own destiny, Virginia's journey had been long but worthwhile. She had found not just safety but belonging, not just escape but purpose, not just shelter but home, And it had all begun with a simple whisper in a dusty barn. "Stay with me."